Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Born to Heal podcast. I'm Dr. Katie Deming, your host. And on today's episode, I'm going to be sharing more about water fasting. But not only am I going to be sharing about some of the things that I'm finding that are of so much value with water fasting, but also I'm sharing that I am shifting my practice once again. So many of you know that I practiced in Western medicine as a radiation oncologist for 20 years and made a shift in 2022. I left Western medicine and launched an integrative practice in 2023, where I've been helping people with cancer heal their bodies naturally. And one of the most profound tools that I have used in this new holistic practice is prolonged water fasting, which is the voluntary abstinence of food for up to 30 days as a way to help the body heal itself from cancer. And there are many benefits to water fasting, and I'll get into a little bit of that. I've done several episodes now on water fasting, but today what I want to share is what that means for my practice. What does that mean for people who want to work with me? And also, why am I making this shift? Why am I again shifting into a more specific area than what I had been doing before, which was helping people in all the different areas of integrative healing. So looking at diet and supplements and physical practices and emotional work and mindset and spiritual deepening. And really the reason why I am shifting to focus solely on water fasting is because water fasting is the one tool that actually addresses everything that I just said. So I've said this before, but I really think that cancer is an imbalance of too much toxicity in the modern world, and all toxicities, meaning the food that we're eating, the air that we're breathing, the water that we're drinking, the emotions that we're experiencing, thoughts that we're thinking. All of those things are toxic in the modern world. And teaching people how to decrease that toxicity has been a big part of my practice. So cancer is really an imbalance of too much toxicity and then undernourishment in all of the ways. Nutritionally, supplementarily, like what are the supplements that we need to be taking? Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, we are undernourished in the modern world. And so in my practice, I have found that really 4 things need to happen for people to heal their bodies naturally. And when I'm speaking of healing naturally, I mean that if you're not going to give any of the treatments, any of the chemotherapy, the radiation, and the surgery, there are certain things that people do that are in common that help themselves heal and achieve what we describe as miraculous results. But the truth is that I don't think that they're miraculous. I think that they are tapping into something that we have lost touch with in modern medicine. And Kelly Turner has several books now, but she's done work in the radical remission space. So Kelly Turner is a PhD who has studied people who have achieved what she coins as radical remissions, meaning that they have defied the odds and been able to eradicate cancer in their body without traditional therapies, or without traditional therapies that would have expected to result in a cure. And she has 10 factors that she's found that are in common with people who achieve radical remissions. And so there is this whole body of work of these things that people do in common. But as I've been practicing in this space, and then also reflecting back on my long experience of 2 decades in conventional oncology, both as a radiation oncologist and also as a healthcare leader within cancer care, I believe that there are 4 things that actually need to happen in order for people to achieve what Kelly describes as radical remissions, and what I would describe as, making cancer disappear in ways that we just do not expect that to happen without traditional therapies. And The four things that I see happening in the people who heal their cancer in natural ways are these. So the first thing is they have a calm nervous system. Their nervous system is calm. They are not hijacked by fear or anger or guilt or shame. And they basically are in a calm state that allows the body to heal. You need a calm nervous system in order to heal. So that's the first thing. They have a calm nervous system. The second thing is that they detox on all levels. They detox physically, they detox emotionally, and they detox mentally. The third thing is that they nourish their bodies. They nourish their bodies in all of the ways. Physically, through food, nutrition, the right water, through sunlight, through grounding, through connection to nature. They also nourish themselves emotionally, and they nourish their thoughts through the, thinking in a way that is really geared towards bringing them where they want to go. So the third thing is nourishment in all of the ways. And then the fourth thing is alignment. And you've heard me talk about this a lot. I had a whole episode speaking about the concept of true healing as opposed to eradicating disease. And true healing comes from alignment, aligning with your true self, aligning with who you came here to be. And what I have found is that alignment is one of the key steps as well to healing. So I'm going to repeat those four things again. People who achieve what would be described as radical remissions or miraculous healings do four things. They have a calm nervous system. They detox on all the levels. They nourish themselves on all the levels. And they also align themselves with their true and authentic self. And actually, when I went through Kelly Turner's list of 10 factors, I could see how all of her 10 factors fit under one of these areas: calm, detox, nourishment, and alignment. And so that's what I've been doing in my practice, even though I think it's hard for people to know exactly that's what I'm doing when I was doing all of these different aspects of healing. That is really what my practice was founded on. And that's actually what I describe as the conscious healing method, is calming the nervous system, detoxing the body, nourishing the body, and aligning with your authentic self. So that's what I've been doing in my practice, although it took me a little bit of time to realize that that's what I was doing. And I've started doing prolonged water fasting as part of my practice. And this was really brought in by my mentor, Don Javier, who is a medicine man or a healer in the ancient ways. And Don Javier, I've done one episode where I did an interview with Tom Cowan, where I actually didn't really intend to share how I came in contact with Don Javier. But that episode, if you want to learn more about how I came into contact with him, but he is a master in all the ways, and in the ways that we would think of like an ascended master. He is someone who came into his physical form, in this human form, complete, meaning he remembers who he is and he remembers his divine nature. He remembers all of his past lives. He has the personal power to be able to have his attention in 1,000 places at once, to basically be living in the silence, which is what we are here to learn how to do. That's the human experience. We come in actually, and when we're born, we forget our divine nature. We forget who we are. And he is someone who comes in complete. And I referenced this in the episode with Tom Cowan, but Don Javier was the apprentice of Don Juan Matus, who was from the Carlos Castaneda book. So Carlos Castaneda was an anthropologist from Stanford who in the 70s published a series of books about apprenticing with a Yaqui shaman sorcerer, Don Juan. And these books are very, very popular. They were at that time. And many of the spiritual thought leaders like Wayne Dyer, Carl Sagan, all quote Don Juan in much of their work. And Carlos wrote those books as if he had apprenticed with Don Juan, but the truth is that Don Javier was the apprentice of Don Juan, and he apprenticed with him. I believe it was between the ages of 10 and 14, although those exact ages I'm not 100% on there. It may have been 10 to 13, but basically he was the apprentice of Don Juan, and then he sold those stories to Carlos Castaneda because Carlos Castaneda was interested in plant medicine, and a lot of the work that Don Juan did with Don Javier was plant medicine. And so when Carlos purchased those books or stories from Don Javier, he basically published them as if he was the apprentice, because he said, who's going to believe that a 10 to 13-year-old boy was ingesting all of these plant medicines? And so anyway, Carlos published those books, and the first 4 books that Carlos published are true apprentices with Don Juan, but it really is Don Javier's story of apprenticing with him. And so those books have become wildly popular, but that boy, Don Javier, is now a 71-year-old man. And I came in contact with him starting in 2020 when I had my shared death experience. I didn't realize that I had come into contact with him, but I came into a group where he was holding the frequency of this online coaching group because Don Javier's brother-in-law was the coach who was running this program, and Don Javier was helping to support him and holding that frequency. And Don Javier holds the frequency of what I would describe as God, like this pure love frequency. And when I came into his frequency, I've learned that I'm very sensitive to the energy. And also it was programmed for me to find him and come back to him in this lifetime. But basically that's when everything opened for me. When I had my shared death experience was a week after I had come into this coaching program where he was holding the frequency, and I started having all these awakenings, and that was because of him. And so I'm going to do a full episode to share more of my journey. And probably I need to do multiple episodes. I'm sure there's a book here because there's just so much to explain that I think is so, I was not looking, I mean, let me clarify. I was looking for him. My higher self was looking for him, but on a conscious level, I was not looking for him. I was not looking for a shaman. I was not looking for someone to guide me in this way, but I was drawn to him and connected with him, and ultimately started working with him and apprenticed with him. And now he is a partner in my practice. And the way that he's described it is that is programmed. He is here at this specific time on planet Earth because the Earth is going through a big transformation, and there are shifts happening on the level of human consciousness that he is assisting with that, both on the Earth and also cosmologically. And he's here as part of that work, but it's programmed that he and I also work together in the way that I can be public facing. And he is someone who, someone like this would never be out in the public. Like you would never find them on a website or on a Instagram page or anything like that. You would only find them if they wanted you to find them. And so, he partners with me because I can be public facing. I can be doing work out in the public. And we've done this before and before as he explains it to me. And again, I don't remember my past lives. I don't remember this. The goal is for me to remember who I am and that I've, done this with him before and before, but I don't at this moment. So I'm in my process of remembering. But when he came back into when I came into his life and found him, he basically has been teaching me about healing, and now, has become a partner in my practice. And I use that word as a partner with the utmost humility because I would never use that word, but he's described that to me, that he and I are partners in this work. And so I am humbled and grateful for the opportunity for his guidance and his mentorship, and also his service to those people who work with me and assistance in their healing. But in the fall of 2023, he started talking to me about prolonged water fasting. And he started by saying that if someone fasted for 9 days, you could make tumors start to shrink. And to be honest, when he started with 9 days, that was mind-boggling to me because I thought 9 days without food was crazy. And so water fasting, what he meant by that was that they would stop eating food and they would just drink water. And so that's how it started. He started talking about, if you just fasted someone for 9 days, you could start to get tumors to shrink. And now I've learned, that the mechanism for this is that at around 6 to 7 days after fasting with water only, and also it can happen with broth fasts if that needs to happen, like a vegetable broth fast, although probably not to the same level. But that at about 6 to 7 days of water fasting where no nutrients are coming in, that the body recognizes there is no additional nutrients coming in and that it needs to prioritize what tissues to use as its fuel because it's going to need to break down tissue in order to survive. And so the body, in its innate divine intelligence, basically prioritizes diseased, dysfunctional tissues and foreign proteins to use as its fuel. And so this, when it happens, the body starts essentially, you could say, eating cancer cells as a way to provide its fuel to the body without using the vital organs like our heart or our brain or the liver, the kidneys, the things that we need to survive. The body does not want to use those as its fuel source. And so it's preferentially targeting cancer cells as dysfunctional tissue to use for fuel. And this is how actually you can start to see shrinkage of tumor at 9 days. It makes sense. So like around 6 to 7 days, you start getting into this point where the body's preferentially favoring use of diseased tissues and you can start to see tumor shrink. So that was how it started. He said 9 days. And just to be clear with everyone, at that time, I thought that was crazy. And then about a month later, he starts talking to me about 30 days, that if you could have someone with cancer fast for 30 days, then you could eradicate cancer in someone with advanced stage disease, like very advanced stages, like someone with stage 4 cancer. You could eradicate cancer for the body through a prolonged water fast. And I was already thinking 9 days was extreme. So 30 days sounded just mind-boggling to me. And I really didn't know that there were centers that did this or that this was a thing. And long story short, I had a client who was interested in doing like whatever she could. She did not want to do chemotherapy. And so she ended up doing a 17-day water fast. And we didn't do 30 days just because she had a vacation planned. And also, to be honest, I was kind of nervous about this. I didn't know that, what was going to happen if someone fasted for this long. And ultimately, she did 17 days and had a brain tumor from a breast cancer. So a metastasis from breast cancer to the brain, had it disappear. And the only conventional therapy that she'd had was radiosurgery, which radiosurgery is not expected to make a cancer go away. In fact, on the scans, usually about 6 months after radiation, the size of the tumor can look a little bit bigger, but the enhancement, the contrast enhancement, which is a sign associated with malignant tumors, would start to decrease, but the tumor would be still there for sure, and maybe even like a little bit of swelling, and also what we called radiation necrosis or dead tissue, dead brain tissue around the tumor. And after her radiosurgery and then this 17-day water fast, she had a completely clean brain. She had no evidence that there was ever a tumor there and no radiation necrosis. So none of this damage related to the radiation. And for me, that was really shocking. And also to her neurosurgeon was like, the tumor's gone and that's not normal, and my client was trying to understand that. She's like, don't you expect it to go away with radiosurgery? And it was not an expected result. And so that got my attention. And then I had another client about 6 months later that she had breast cancer and her surgeon wanted to do a mastectomy. And we ended up doing a 14-day water fast. Again, it was limited because of her work schedule and she was an attorney working and it was hard to get time off. And so we did 14 days. And when she had her mammogram after the water fast, cancer was gone and she didn't end up having to have a mastectomy. So he had my attention at that point, and I was like, okay, I'm paying attention, because even in Western medicine, I have never seen something like that happen where people had eradicated cancer without conventional therapy. And of course, we were doing more than a water fast. We were doing emotional work. We changed their diet after the fast. We did mindset work, but the water fast was really the foundation of what we were doing. And so I realized about this time that there are other, facilities that do this. There are other doctors who facilitate water fasts. And so I started sending my clients to these other doctors who were doing water fasts, and realized that the way that the water fasts were being done, they were not done for cancer. So these are centers that were doing it for various health reasons, because actually water fasting is very powerful for so many conditions, but they were doing it and they would see some people with cancer, but it wasn't really, the focus was not on doing this for cancer. And the refeeding for these centers was plant-based diet. And when my clients would be refed, which is the most important part of water fasting. And I want to stop here and just say, if you guys are interested in water fasting, every Wednesday I do a class basically about the power of fasting in healing. And I specifically focus on cancer, but I have people who fast with me who do not have cancer. So this is not specific to cancer, but every Wednesday at 10 a.m. PST, I have a class where it teaches you all about this. So like, if you're interested, you can join us. We'll put the link in the show notes. But anyway, I'm not going to go into super depth in this podcast, but I do have that class every Wednesday. And so please join me if you're interested in learning more about this. But basically what happened when I was sending my clients to these other centers is that they were being refed with a plant-based diet, which was high in fruit juices and vegetable juices, and then starches and legumes and all of the things that I don't want my clients to be eating. Since I see cancer as a metabolic condition, I don't want my clients eating those foods. Those are not the foods that are going to be healing for cancer. They can be inflammatory. They basically are providing glucose to the tumor cells, which we know cancer uses glucose as its primary fuel source. And so I had been sending people out, and then finally was like, okay, I guess I can't do that because they're not being refed in a metabolically appropriate way. And so I need to start doing this myself. And in February of 2025, I hosted a group water fast because I had a full practice. So my practice was full at this point with my new holistic integrative practice. And the only time that I really had to fast people was during my lunch hour. So I decided, I had multiple clients who wanted to do it. And so during my lunch hour, I started hosting prolonged water fast for my clients. And first cohort that went through was in February of 2025. And the things that happened in there were even more profound than the things that I had seen happen with those first two clients. And then also my other clients had done well. But when I started doing the fast in a group setting, and then also Don Javier started supporting the energy of the fasting group. And also he was working on many of my fasters energetically through the elements in the ways of shamanism. So using the natural elements to heal the light body, started to see really incredible things, not just happening physically for my clients, but also these beautiful emotional healings and spiritual connections with themselves and spiritual awakenings that created awareness around the roots of the illness. And so since that time, since February, I've been having this group fasting during my lunch hour, while I was running my practice, and seeing the just miraculous nature of this tool. And what I realized was, and during the fast, so when I have the group, what's beautiful is bringing the groups together is that I can do more than just, checking in on their vitals and kind of making sure that they're safe and instructing them on, water and how much salt and minerals and that kind of thing just during the fast, and also refeeding, which is one of the most important parts of fasting, because the most dangerous part of fasting is refeeding. So one of the things that I want people to take away from this episode is that prolonged water fasting is not something you should be doing on your own without guidance, because it can be quite dangerous. And I see this a lot. Actually, people are like, they hear an episode of mine and then they're like, oh, I'm just going to do this. And then they come, messaging me through Instagram or YouTube or whatever, because they've now done a 10 or 15-day fast and they don't know how to refeed themselves and they're in a quandary. And this is really dangerous. And I, just so you know, I'm not going to help you at that point in a fast, because it needs to be done in a specific way. And so I really encourage people, if they want to do a prolonged water fast, come to one of my calls and then we can, help you through the whole process. But it's not something that you want to do on your own, because it can be quite dangerous when you go to refeed yourself. But the group water fast, we're doing multiple things. So I was started incorporating the things that I was doing in my practice to help them. So of course, when they're refeeding, we're teaching them the appropriate metabolic diet for people with cancer, and whether or not they want to do a full ketogenic diet, they can do that with my food guide. Or if they want to do, not like a full ketogenic diet with these very, very high percentages of fats, but more of like a moderate fat, moderate protein, but low carbohydrate diet, we do that. So we teach them how to refeed and then also how to eat going forward. Their microbiome has been reset. So we're teaching them how to establish the microbiome in a healthy way through fermented vegetables, cultured dairy, kefir, tonics, fermented tonics. And so really giving them a good foundation on how to eat after. We're doing emotional work while they're fasting, because fasting facilitates emotional detox. I have a subconscious coach who comes in to help with releasing things from the subconscious and programming the subconscious mind. I have a mindset coach who comes in and helps with doing mindset coaching. I have a nutritionist and chef who comes in and helps with that support from the nutritional component. And then I'm doing teaching about the things that I've learned about healing from all different aspects. I mean, obviously my career spans like a really broad spectrum, all the way from conventional medicine into this very natural way of healing, but then also the spiritual teachings from Don Javier and his benefactor, Don Juan. I do a lot of teaching of how can we use these ancient principles of healing and connection to facilitate healing for them. And so the results of what I was seeing in these groups was just beautiful. And what I saw was those 4 things that I told you about at the beginning of this episode: calming the nervous system, detoxing on all levels, nourishing the body on all levels, and then alignment with the authentic self, were natural parts of a water fast. And so here I had found one modality that really incorporated all of the things that people needed to create conditions for radical healing in the body. And so I've been doing that, and I've still been doing it on my lunch hour. So it's been, like I'm still seeing clients all day long and doing this. And then I realized in June, when I met with Don Javier, he told me that you're in too much noise, that you're not practicing your art of healing in the highest way because you're caught up in too much noise. Because I've been trying to do all the things, because I left Western medicine and then I'm this natural healing space, and there's so many different things to learn about and to do. And every client's coming to me with this, or like, what about ivermectin and fenbendazole or mebendazole? What about, these supplements? And what about this? And what about hyperbaric? And what about IV vitamin C and all this stuff? And so I I can hear just in myself speaking that is like, I was so busy and it became so noisy for me that what he said was that you're distorting yourself by being in all of that noise and trying to do everything. I really took that to heart. And I understand what a privilege it is to be his apprentice and to be guided in this way, that I always take to heart the things that he says to me. And so I left that visit together, and I had already planned to do my own fast. So I was going to do 7-day water fast. I had cleared my schedule, except for I was going to continue to work with my fasters because there's always fasters going, but I cleared my schedule from all my other clients. And I really did just what I teach my clients to do, and to rest and to get quiet. And then, Don Javier held the frequency for my fast, just like he holds the frequency for my fasting group. And it became clear during that fast that the way for me to get out of the noise and to really be a clear vessel to help facilitate clients in their healing was to focus my practice on what was the most effective and what was serving them in the highest manner. And as I looked around at my practice, the water fasting was that one thing. And also the other thing is that it was intensely nourishing for me. So this fasting group that is held with the frequency of Don Javier is like a very special bubble. It's like a very special place to be. And my fasters will tell you that they don't want to leave. Many of them don't want to start eating again because they feel so clear and connected to the divine, connected to themselves in a way that many of them never experienced. And many of them actually, they have, different skills. So like if they can lead a visualization or a meditation, or they're a coach of some kind, they ask if they can come back into the group so that they can serve, so they can be in that energy, because it is such a beautiful space. And so as I was reflecting on my practice and seeing what was working, like, okay, what is the most effective tool that I'm using with my clients? It was water fasting. And then looking at what was the most nourishing for me, it was water fasting. And then when I looked at the rest of my practice of seeing clients back to back all day long, and especially in the way that I, have been practicing in this new practice, is that it's very draining for me, because a lot of the work that we do is emotional, and just seeing back-to-back one-on-one clients all day was really taking a toll on me. And that was part of the noise too, is that I care so deeply about my clients that when they bring something to me, I go chasing down to educate myself so that I can help them understand if that's something that they should be pursuing or not. And I realized that it was really depleting me. And so after that water fast that I did in June, I basically came back to Don Javier and said, I want to focus my practice on water fasting. That is the one thing that is making the biggest difference in my clients' lives. And it is also the one thing that feels the most nourishing and the most connected to my heart and where my desires lie with my practice. And so, I discussed that with him. And once I got, clear guidance about that path, I basically started to shift everything. So at the end of June, I made the decision, okay, I'm closing my one-on-one practice. So you'll notice if you go to my website, you can no longer schedule consults just to see me for general consultations. Now I'm purely focused on water fasting. And, part of this is that I tell you guys that you need to live a life that is authentic to you. Like that is what we're here to do. And so this, shift for me is me talking the talk and walking the walk, like, because I have to follow that too. If this is what my heart is guiding me towards, if this is what I'm being intuitively led to, I owe it to myself and also the world to follow that. And so I am now fully into this shift of, I'm still finishing up seeing those clients that had been scheduled with me. I think I have some people scheduled through, the third week of August or so, but then basically will be completely focusing my practice on water fasting in all the ways. So prolonged water fasting is the most profound tool that I have, but also, shorter fasts, teaching people how to get started with fasting. So I have a free guide on doing a 24-hour fast, and we'll link that in the show notes. And then I'm hosting a 3-day water fast, August 8th through 11th, for people who want to take that next step and do a 3-day water fast. And then, I'm working on creating some programs for people who are fasting around chemotherapy, because there's benefits associated with that. And so I am embracing this shift, even though it's scary, because to be honest, I gave up everything and have been using my savings to launch my practice, which it takes time actually I still haven't paid myself, and I have a team. And so I have to, pay my team, and I'm building it and knowing that eventually I'm going to be, self-sustaining and able to support myself with my practice. But I hadn't gotten to that point. So this shift into water fasting is scary for me, because it's yet another shift, and it means more time to, help myself get to a place where this is self-sustaining. But this is where I'm guided this time. And so this is where my heart is, and this is where I need to follow if I'm following the things that I teach all of you. And I want to read a beautiful passage that is from Don Juan that really gets to the heart of this shift for me. And what I want you to take away from this episode, in addition to that water fasting is extremely powerful, and I would love to have you, join me for one of the fasting calls so that you can learn more, but is, what does it mean to follow your heart, and how can we all be examples of that in our life? So I want to read this quote because I think that it's beautiful, and I think it's worth sharing. And it's something that I've used. I actually posted this quote on my Facebook page in the summer of 2022 when I was leaving medicine, and I knew that my heart was guiding me somewhere else. But I want to read it again now, because it's a quote that I keep with me and I use to calibrate myself to where is it that I am meant to serve, and how do I keep myself on the track of integrity and connection with my authentic self as I gate these shifts in my own career. So here's the quote, and this is from Don Juan, from Carlos Castaneda book, The Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge. Anything is one of a million paths. Therefore, you must always keep in mind that a path is only a path. If you feel you should not follow it, you must not stay with it under any conditions. To have such clarity, you must lead a disciplined life. Only then will you know that any path is only a path, and there is no affront to oneself or to others in dropping it if that is what your heart tells you to do. But your decision to keep on the path or to leave it must be free of fear or ambition. I warn you. Look at every path closely and deliberately. Try it as many times as you think necessary. This question is one that only a very old man asks. Does this path have a heart? All paths are the same. They lead nowhere. They are paths going through the bush or into the bush. In my own life, I could say I have traversed long, long paths, but I'm not anywhere. Does this path have a heart? If it does, the path is good. If it doesn't, it is of no use. Both paths lead nowhere, but one has a heart, the other doesn't. One makes for a joyful journey. As long as you follow it, you are one with it. The other will make you curse your life. One makes you strong, the other weakens you. Before you embark on any path, ask the question, does this path have a heart? If the answer is no, you will know it, and then you must choose another path. The trouble is nobody asks the question. And when a man finally realizes that he has taken a path without heart, the path is ready to kill him. At that point, very few men can stop to deliberate and leave the path. A path without a heart is never enjoyable. You have to work hard even to take it. On the other hand, a path with heart is easy. It does not make you work at liking it. Don Juan. So this is my path with heart as I move into water fasting full time as my calling, as my way to serve. And I am excited with what is to come. I'm also nervous, just like you, as I encourage you guys to make those shifts and pivot in ways that stretch you. This is also a big stretch for myself. And so I thank you for supporting the work in all the ways that I've done it, and also look forward to serving you in this new way through water fasting. Until next week, take care. Thank you for being here today. Please enjoy a previous episode of Born to Heal. And if you found value in our conversation, please subscribe and share with someone who might benefit. Have questions? Drop them in the YouTube comments or message me on Instagram. Links are in the episode description. And remember, just like me, you were born to heal.